whatever time zone you are, hello everyone, and thanks for joining today. I'd like to talk a little bit about, obviously, creating PDFs using HTML and why it matters to me to do that. But first of all, some of you might have noticed that the image on the title slide didn't really reflect my current view of my face. So I'd like to quickly introduce myself again. My name is Francois Fernandes, and I'm a solution architect. I don't have hair anymore. The hair was for my younger self. I work for Digital Frontiers, and in addition, I am member of the board of the PDF Association. My history goes back to actually right to the start of PDFA. When PDFA got released as an ISO standard, this was the first thing that I got in touch with, really. I was a little bit involved in PDF, in knowing some things, but PDFA really kicked it off for me. So I have quite some history with PDF. And it still matters to me to this day. But why am I talking about creating PDFs using HTML? Why does it matter to me? At Digital Frontiers, we have been facing one situation. We do have some kind of, let's say, profile documents where we describe our knowledge or experiences of ourselves, and they tend to have a lot of information in them. In the past, they have been created using Google Docs, and that's a solution that works somehow, but it came to me, or we had the situations where really technically skilled people didn't care really about how the layer actually looks like, because they just wanted to get the information in. So that's something that bugged me, to be honest. And obviously updating took pretty long. So that means, as a situation where I started, there was a lot of manual layouting. It resulted in broken layouts. And on top of that, we had questionable PDFs, because Google Docs does some very strange things with PDF documents. It almost seems like they're generating images and then OCRing those images just to get some kind of text extracted afterwards. It's very strange, and honestly, I was dying inside. So obviously, we needed another solution. We needed a solution which works pretty fast and is simply reliable, so it's not that easy to break it. And one of the most important things for me was to have something that doesn't interfere with the layout. So if someone's editing their profile, they shouldn't take care of whether or not the layout is going to account for the changes, or to handle those simple quirks, or not simple, those quirks that Google Docs or any word processing program actually has. It was intended to be easy. And one thing that I didn't want to get rid of is to have the ability to show changes pretty much instantly, so you know that what you've changed, what you added in the document or in the HTML, in the original HTML, is reflected very fast. But why HTML? Well, I think no one will argue that HTML has become the de facto standard in document markup. Most information on the world, and I'm pretty confident that in saying so, is marked up in HTML. But HTML does have its downsides. It is not very consistent and future-proof. That's something that is, and there we get back to PDFA, where PDF really shines. And I wanted to combine those technologies. In addition, the whole ecosystem around around HTML, is evolving very rapidly. You have constant new tools. You have new HTML standards being developed, more rich semantics within HTML documents, and that can be transferred to PDF documents. And this is what I would really like. Of course, as I already said, it should be really easy to read and write, especially for technical people that don't care about how it looks like, but care a lot about the information that is within. And of course, editing support should be widely available. And it should be possible to produce beautiful layouts, a lot of colors, etc. So, and now I'm taking a beating here, but no, LaTeX is not a solution for us. It's basically just ruled out because the editing support being widely available, because not everyone is going to be using Emacs. Just kidding, don't roast me right now. All that aside, I would like to introduce you a little bit to the tool chain, or at least the tool selection that we've used. And those of you who are a little bit used to how web development, HTML development actually goes right now in the HTML, JavaScript, and CSS community, most of the tools shouldn't be any news to you. They are commonly used and they are proven. For example, my example is based on Yarn to manage dependencies and basically the execution. I personally love Sass simply because it gets rid of some quirks of the CSS language and makes it easier to use. Gulp for Google, yes, I know there are a million other build tools out there in the JavaScript ecosystem, but that one just works fine for me and I like it. And there's the first real new thing for at least some, which is Puppeteer. And Puppeteer has a special role. It does allow to control Chrome or Chromium instances remotely using the dev tooling protocol. And that's the key feature on how we will be going to generate PDF documents. Obviously, we're going to be using Chromium or Google Chrome for the rendering of those documents. And one last thing, we will be using browser sync because I said I want real live previews of things that I did change. I have been, just as a side note, been evaluating a lot of different tools of how to generate PDF documents. Among them were multiple formatters based on XSLFO and other languages. Why did I rule them out? Simply because it was hard for me to get really used to them, and I was lacking the simple, easy tooling that gets me started very quickly. XSLFO, for example, in combination with FOP or any kind of other formatter, is a reliable solution, so don't get me wrong, but it didn't really fit my personal needs. In particular, I wanted a lot of styling capabilities for those documents. So that's the tooling I went for. Now let's look at how documents are actually being generated. In fact, we have two main, let's say, lanes within the life cycle of those documents. We have the actual document generation, which takes HTML, converts it to a PDF document, and we have the live preview line that allows me to have a live preview of what I'm going to be changing in a browser. And we will be looking at the live preview later in detail. And in fact, if all goes well, and I know I'm asking for trouble, I'll try to do a live demo. But let's go through the document generation process. First of all, we have the simple entry point. Again, for those using HTML and JavaScript projects or being such projects, is very common. I'm using Yarn and Gulp to control all that. Next step is to generate CSS based on Sass. That allows us to do some very neat tricks, and I'd like to show you later on the one or the other. that makes your life a lot easier. And of course, after that, we generate the document. We instruct a headless Google Chrome or Chromium instance to load that HTML file, apply the styles, etc., and then generate the PDF document. That's basically it. It's that simple. It's that simple, and most importantly, it's that fast and reliable. But we'll get into more details later on. Live preview, as I said, is another very important thing for me. Basically, how it's realized, we have again an entry point using the yarn and gulp. And now comes the interesting part. It is watching for changes. Watching for changes in particular on HTML content and CSS or SAS content. Meaning, once one of those files is actually being changed, the pipeline is getting re-triggered, meaning especially generating the CSS. The HTML is not processed at all. And after that, it is going to be reloaded in the browser. And we will see that live in action, as I said, later on. But let's dig for the moment, dig a little bit deeper into Puppeteer and what we're actually doing to generate PDF documents, because the logic on PDF rendering is really built into Google Chrome, and we leverage exactly that. What we do is using Puppeteer, a very simple process, and that code is actually all that is needed to script Google Chrome to generate a PDF document. We start by launching the browser, opening a new page, which is basically opening a new tab. We go to the actual file, our document, and that is located in the current working directory in a subdirectory called source and named document.html. And there's one interesting thing: we have the wait until. If you have HTML documents or HTML files in general, a typical thing is to asynchronously load stuff from the network. So how do you really decide, and that's a common problem, how do you really decide when page loading is actually really complete? And the network idle 0 is basically an instruction to tell Chrome, I consider your page as being completely loaded when there's 0 open network connections for at least 500 milliseconds. And of course, no JavaScript call is currently underway. But that's the way how the browser decides, well, I'm now done, I can go on. Now it's going to the actual PDF generation. Here we specify a format of the document page, but that's to be considered as kind of a fallback, because I would like to have the option to change the format later on in my CSS, because it's belonging there, in my personal point of view. So that's the reason why there's the second option, prefer CSS page size, meaning A4 is actually just a fallback if there's no CSS page size given in the HTML. And one important thing, of course, we don't want those ugly typical browser header and footers, which just includes the URL of the document with some metadata at the bottom. And the final thing, where do we want to store that? We call that document PDF, that's it. After that, we close the browser and we're done. That's the most complicated part of that whole process already done. Now let's look at the live preview. When I'm having an HTML file, which with some content, I have the problem that we have different formats when I compare a page to an actual web page within a browser. First of all, a page is limited in its size. Let's use A4 with 210 millimeters of width for the page. So the obvious thing would be that we should limit the page width for that specific content. And if we're doing some magic with auto margins, paddings, I'm sorry, then the area that we're going to be working in will be automatically be centered on the page. Obviously, in addition, we will have margins because we don't want to print up to the corner of the page that we would like to apply. One important thing for me was I wanted one specific HTML element to be the root of all of my content. We cannot use the body to encapsulate basically anything due to how HTML is being handled and how we can lay out things on the page. So I've come up with basically anything that I want to generate is an article which might consist of multiple pages, or a document which consists even of multiple articles. We have that option. But we have one problem, and that's can be seen here on our preview. We would like the article element to be the centered element, that's the thick lines in the browser, but the content within the article should be positioned within that margin. On the other hand, we have the printed side where the article is basically has a margin of the page and no margin within. That has to be especially matched between the browser and the actual page that's going to be printed on. And that's a simple trick. We simply switch how the article is being displayed on the page. We're adding simply a padding, which expands the overall element basically, and to encompass those expansions, what we do is simply to reduce the page width by those margins. That means page width, our target page width, including the margins, is our actual page width of the A4 page. And that's the whole trick, just to get that simple thing to be run. The CSS, or to be honest, it's basically SAS here is very simple. As I said before, we configure a page with a specific page size. In our case, it is for A4. I'm doing the same thing in our demo document as well. And for the screen media query, meaning if it is displayed in a browser, we're applying exactly that article statement or article rules, which does what I've just been describing. It uses as a width the page width, but subtracts the margin left and margin right. So it's reducing the article element to be narrower and match the page width. But that's enough talking. Let's see me fail, or hopefully not, and have a look at the actual working demo project. The project will be shared on GitHub for you. So if you're interested, please feel free to have a look at the GitHub repository. I'm looking here at a very simple setup. On the left, we have my IDE with the project opened. On the right, it's just an empty browser for the moment. It's just prepared for us to go. And again, those that are familiar with HTML projects, that's a simple node project being configured with Yarn. We have a package JSON. Here we have, and that's the most interesting thing, 3 steps, of which 2 are the most interesting for us. We have the generate PDF. That's a step or the job that actually generates our PDF document. And we have the serve. The serve is the live preview one. On the other hand, we have in the source folder the actual source document. It's just an ordinary HTML. We have an article with a heading, with sections, which itself do have headings, and a lot of content. So a very basic, simple document. Let's just run the PDF file generation and have a look at the generated PDF document. That's it. The document is generated. Let's have a look. And here we are. It is a very simple document. It just reflects the content as is. There's no real formatting right now, but we'll fix that. For one, I don't like that font. In addition, I would like, that is one section. And the second section, I would like to have that starting on a new page. So first of all, let's get rid of that font. To do that, and because I would like to have the live preview, I'm just switching to my live preview right now. That's it. On the right side, we now have the live preview of our document. One thing that it's right now not impossible to, but is impossible to reproduce is actually the real physical page breaks that the browser has to do because of how the HTML is rendered. So no browser, as far as I am aware of, does have a print preview, a real automatable print preview. They all are always stuck if you're doing the print preview in their print dialogs, and then live updates won't work anymore, which is too bad. So we're using a continuous page. It's basically the same model that Word has for continuous page viewing. But again, I would like to have section 2 to be on a different page. So then let's jump into our CSS. Again, section is our element. That is what I want to have a page break after, basically. So page break after, always. Obviously, that doesn't change anything in HTML. But again, let's run the PDF generation just for one last time to see that this works. I'll open the PDF document. There it is. You see, now we have the section on a different page. But let's stop here with continuously generating PDF just to view our changes. I want to reflect that in the HTML. As I said, it's not really possible to reflect those page breaks that the browser is going to make, but we can at least highlight those changes or page breaks that we want to force. And that's one of the things why I love Sass, because I can use a thing called a mixin. I can include a page break after mixin, but I've been providing upfront. I save that, and what you see here is it added automatically a page break element, so I can see where I have my page break on that page. Let's quickly look at that, and it's pretty easy on what's actually happening. It's just telling that in the case of for one, the element becomes a page break after always. And in addition, in the case of media screen, and that's not possible with plain CSS to nest those rules, but I'm able to do it here. For the media screen, just add a virtual element at the end of my section to visualize the page break. But that's not all. I think we can do even better. For one, I would like to have a nicer typography. I prepared a little bit for that. Again, live reload, I quickly see what my changes are. And in addition, I would like to have a multi-column layout with 2 columns for my text. It's quickly reflected. And I guess the first paragraph in my text is actually something that some kind of introductory sentences. I would like to highlight them as well. So let's state that the first child is actually Telly. That's it. It is that easy. Now we can go even beyond that. I prepared some other things, and I'm not going to write all of them up front, but you can have real fun in designing those documents, and it's really fast, and you have always a quick preview of your resulting document. And is it reflected in the actual PDF? Let's have a look. Just generating the document again. That's it. I wasn't prepared that it's going that fast. Open the PDF, and you can see those changes, even having a table in the document reflected in the PDF. This is exactly what I was looking for. It's fast, it's pretty easy to use, it is pretty powerful. You can do a lot of things, but it still remains pretty easy to use. So obviously I failed to close it, to keep my keynote open. I'll change that quickly. That's all cool and dandy, but what are the limitations? Of course, there are some. For one, it is really hard to generate a table of contents because page numbering is not really fixed, and you cannot have any kind of JavaScript that really detects which page number comes where. So you won't be able to have that. And to be honest, header and footer handling is very limited. There is some magic you can do, and for those who are interested, get in touch with me. There is a technique to use tables to magically have headers and footers on HTML documents and reflected that in a PDF document. But it is not that straightforward. So if you're in design need of a header and footer, another solution might be better for you. And of course, adding content outside of the page area is not possible, because if you would like, and that's a typical technique in HTML, to position things out of bounds of the current element, it is still being rendered if you're setting overflow correctly. That's not possible for printing. The printed area is exactly where your text is going to be, and that's it. No magic there. And unfortunately, and that's a real pain, and I was hoping that this is going to be different. For Chrome, at least, there is an open bug report, and I'm really hoping that it's going to be fixed in the near future. Right now, no tagging information is written into the document. That's a shame, and it should be changed. And I guess it will be changed in the future. But if that's okay, if you're fine with those limitations, that can do a lot for you. If you're in desire need of having, for example, a table of contents, there are commercial tools available which do support such things. For example, Colors has a PDF chip. I know that iText does provide a HTML library, and there are more. Consult the PDF Association product page if you would like any kind of deeper insight into other products. That's for what I wanted to show, to demonstrate today. And I'm now open for any questions. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, Francois. That was great. So it's time to begin answering questions, and it's still possible to submit questions through the questions pane in the attendee control panel. Francois, do you want me to read the questions to you, or do you want to read them for yourself?
If you could read them, that would be great.
Sure. The first question we have here is, does the techniques you've been proposing, do they work for editable PDFs or only static ones? For example, creating a fillable document that someone has with no knowledge of HTML will be able to edit.
No, basically that's really for static documents. So even if you're using that to generate, or you have some kind of generation logic which generates the HTML and then you're going to PDF, that's one option. But that shouldn't be too hard to actually realize such a thing. To have some kind of form up front you could fill out, and then the HTML, and after that the PDF is actually being generated.
Mhm.
One thing for people that would like to be a little bit more limited, let's say, or a little bit more guided, one thing that's even possible, and I've just started in exploring that option, is you can declare custom elements in HTML. So for example, if you would like to have something interesting or something very specific, let's say that box that was in that example document, instead of having a div with sub-elements, you could have a custom element called my box or something like that, making editing easier.
Mhm. Next question, is it possible to export a tagged structure from the HTML? That is to say, I guess, to create a tagged PDF.
Unfortunately, not yet with that tooling that I just presented. As I said, there's an open bug report within Chrome. They are aware of that problem, and it is really bad because you have a very semantically rich input. And I'm really hoping that this is going to be getting fixed really soon. It might even be fixed right now. I haven't checked for, I think, 2 or 3 weeks. But that's going to be changing in the future, hopefully at least.
Okay. Christoph asks, what about hyphenation? And I'm actually not quite clear on the context there, but
well, to be absolutely honest, for the moment, I have no idea. It is using basically what Chrome is actually using. So I don't think that hyphenation is really an option. There are JavaScript libraries which could support, but I have never tried that. It would be worth giving it a shot.
Yep. So last question we have at this moment is, more showing up, but are HTML input elements converted to forms?
No, there's only the rendered representation being converted. So it's really a static representation. It's not that you can do that to easily generate form PDFs. It might be, but as I said before, there are vendors out there which support that concept with their custom technologies that they will be able to do that. Same thing goes for tagging, for example. You should have, if you're in design lead for such a thing, have a look at those solutions. Again, the solution page on PDF Association website is the way to go.
And Dietrich has pointed out that hyphenator.js does a good job, he says, of regarding the hyphenation question.
Thank you very much, Dietrich.
Are there any other questions for Francois?
When you're thinking about whether or not you have another question, you can always get in touch with me with the means shown on this slide here. Or my email address is on the second slide, so please feel free to get in touch with me. In addition, the sample code will be, it's not yet, be made available publicly on GitHub, on the repository that you're seeing linked right here. I will push the actual project within, I think, 30 minutes.